Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. He vanished from tech fame at 38, trading boardrooms for silence on 12 acres of untouched forest. No rules, no neighbors, no HOA. But peace is fragile, and when a neon orange McLaren appeared in his driveway, the quiet town started watching. And Karen came knocking. When I was younger, I always dreamed of a life with no meetings, no alarm clocks, and most importantly, no one breathing down my neck about how I live. After selling my tech company at 38, I made that dream real. I didn't want penthouses or limelight. I wanted space, silence, and the kind of freedom you feel in your bones. So I bought it. 12 acres of untouched wooded land about 40 minutes outside the city. A place so quiet you could hear the wind slip between pine needles. The property came with an old but sturdy house, which I renovated top to bottom. Think modern architecture wrapped around a steel and glass core, with a kitchen straight out of a five-star restaurant and an underground garage that could house my car collection. Just a little indulgence for a guy who used to code 16 hours a day. There was a private pond, a personal workshop, even a reinforced pad in the back if I ever needed to land a helicopter. Not that I had one yet. And here's the part that sold me. No HOA. The land had never been under any homeowners association, and I made damn sure it stayed that way when I closed the deal. No shared bylaws, no mandatory fees, no sanctimonious committees. Just me, my space, and the right to live how I damn well pleased. The first few months were bliss. I kept to myself, spent days rebuilding an old Mustang in the garage, went fishing when I wanted, worked on my garden, or simply watched the sunset from my back deck with a glass of bourbon. Neighbors, if you could call folks who lived half a mile down the road neighbors, were friendly but distant. The way I liked it. A wave here, a nod there, but no forced barbecues or block parties. At that point, I thought I'd won the game. I'd built the life I always wanted, where no one cared who I was, what I owned, or how I spent my time. That peace, though, that pure, undisturbed quiet, it didn't last. It started with the supercar. To be clear, I wasn't trying to make a statement. My McLaren P1 had been in storage across the state since I sold the company, and I finally decided it deserved to breathe fresh air. I had it delivered by covered transport. Quietly, I thought. But apparently, in a town where the loudest event is usually a church potluck, a neon orange hypercar rolling down a private driveway turns heads. I saw the curtain twitch across the road. Just a flicker, but it was enough to put me on edge. Then came the kitchen delivery. A professional-grade stainless steel overhaul, custom fabricated walk-in fridge, top-end everything. I wasn't planning on opening a restaurant, but I do love to cook, and when I do something, I don't half-ass it. The crew arrived in 3 trucks, spent 2 full days hauling equipment in and out, and all the while, I could feel the neighborhood radar clicking on. One afternoon, a kid from down the road skateboarded past and shouted, "Hey, is that a movie room I saw upstairs?" I paused. "Movie room?" He grinned. "My mom saw through the window last night. You got stadium seating and everything." I smiled, gave a casual shrug, and went back to tinkering with the fire pit. But inside, I felt that first tremor. Someone had been watching. Through my windows. Next week, it escalated. A guy walking his dog along the back tree line stopped to snap pictures. He was pretending to be on the phone, but I saw the camera lens peek over the hedge. I installed a few more motion-activated lights and cameras after that. But the real cherry on the sundae came when I had a concrete pad poured behind the garage. It wasn't subtle. Contractors, machinery, several tons of gravel. And when they were done, I had a smooth 50 by 50 space with a reinforced center. I didn't think much of it. I like options. Maybe one day I'd host guests by helicopter. Maybe not. Point is, it was my land, my rules. But to some folks, that concrete wasn't just a pad. It was a landing zone for their wildest fantasies. Someone must have said, "He's got a helipad. That means he's filthy rich." And from there, the gossip exploded. I became the billionaire in the woods. I heard variations of it in whispers at the feed store, in curious questions from delivery guys. My privacy had a hairline crack, and the pressure was building behind it. Still, I didn't engage. I didn't throw parties, I didn't show off, and I certainly didn't flaunt anything. But money has a scent, and once people catch it, it doesn't matter how quiet you are. That's when Karen arrived at my door. She showed up on a Saturday morning, crisp and composed, as if she'd been waiting for weeks to make her entrance. A short, angular woman in her late 50s, dressed like she'd just stepped out of a suburban country club catalog, pressed khakis, pastel cardigan, pearl earrings that probably hadn't left her ears since Reagan was in office. She didn't knock right away. Instead, she stood in front of my door for a few seconds, lips pursed, eyes scanning the facade of the house like she was conducting an appraisal. I opened the door before she had the chance. "Can I help you?" I asked. Her smile was instant, plastic, and painfully wide. "Mr. Holland, I presume? I'm Karen Whitmore, president of the Silver Pines Homeowners Association. Lovely place you have here." Her eyes darted past me into the house like she expected to be invited in. I didn't move. "Thanks, but I'm not part of Silver Pines." Her smile twitched, but held. "Oh, I'm aware. I did a little digging after I heard you'd moved in. Your property technically sits just outside our boundaries, but practically, you're part of the community, wouldn't you say?" I blinked. "I wouldn't." That earned a small, forced laugh. "Well, that's exactly why I came by. You see, we believe in fostering a spirit of collaboration around here. Community matters. And we all benefit when everyone participates." I crossed my arms. "Let me guess. You want me to join the HOA Karen didn't miss a beat. We would love to have you. Someone of your caliber would bring real value to our neighborhood. You have so many resources. Imagine what you could contribute to our shared spaces. Beautification, security upgrades, holiday events." I raised a hand. "Let me stop you right there. I bought this property precisely because it's not part of any HOA. I like my privacy. I'm not interested." Her smile thinned, but she kept the cheery tone. Of course. But surely you see how it might look unusual. Someone with your means, living in a community but not giving back to it. People might take that the wrong way." I narrowed my eyes. "That sounds an awful lot like guilt-tripping, Karen." "Oh no, not at all," she said quickly, waving a hand. "Just something to think about. After all, perception is everything. And the neighborhood's been talking. It's no secret you have significant assets." I leaned against the doorframe, studying her. "So this isn't about community. It's about money." She stiffened slightly. "It's about fairness. We all share in the burdens. And when someone as well off as yourself chooses not to participate, it creates tension." I could have laughed. "Karen, I'm not stopping anyone from mowing their lawn or putting up bunting on the 4th of July. But I'm not joining an HOA just because you think I should." Something shifted in her posture then. The mask cracked just for a moment. "We can be very persuasive, Mr. Holland. Most people find it easier to cooperate than to stand alone." I met her gaze without flinching. "Good thing I prefer standing alone." She gave a curt nod, pulled a glossy pamphlet from her bag, and handed it to me like it was some final courtesy. "Take some time. Think it over. The board meets next Tuesday. We'd be happy to welcome you." With that, she turned and walked away, heels clicking neatly down the stone path, posture ramrod straight. I watched her go, already knowing this wasn't the end of it. Not by a long shot. The next week, I started receiving mail. Lots of it. At first, it was just more glossy pamphlets like the one Karen had handed me, filled with smiling families, freshly painted gazebos, and bullet points about shared responsibility and communal pride. I tossed them in the recycling without reading past the first line. Then came the formal invitations, envelopes stamped with HOA letterhead, addressed to Graham Holland, future community member. The wording was polite but insistent, each one inching closer to pressure. "We look forward to your participation. The neighborhood thrives on unity. Non-involvement leads to misunderstandings." Cute. I ignored them. Then the tone shifted. The next letter arrived in a stark white envelope with bold red text, notice of non-compliance. It claimed I was in violation of local visual integrity standards and included a bulleted list of infractions. Improper lawn uniformity. I had a native grass mix, deliberate, sustainable, and perfectly legal. Unauthorized structural design, referring to my garage, which had been on the property longer than half the homes in their subdivision. Noise disturbances, presumably my backup generator, which had tested once during a power hiccup. None of it made sense, and none of it had teeth. I wasn't subject to their rules, But that didn't stop the HOA from sending a second notice, and a third. Then came the garbage. One morning, I walked out to find 3 black trash bags dumped right outside my gate, blocking the entrance. One of them had a sign duct taped to it. Pitch in. You're part of this whether you like it or not. It was juvenile, but what got under my skin wasn't the act itself. It was the calculation behind it. Karen wasn't trying to convince me anymore. She was trying to make staying quiet uncomfortable. I installed a few more cameras, repositioned the floodlights, and started documenting every encounter. The online campaign kicked off a few days later. I'd never joined the local Facebook group, Silver Pines Neighbors United, but someone sent me screenshots. Karen had posted a long, passive-aggressive essay titled, "Should the Privileged Be Exempt from Community Responsibility?" It didn't mention me by name, but the subtext couldn't have been clearer. She wrote about a reclusive millionaire who lives lavishly while ignoring the people around him, asking, "Is this fair? Is this neighborly?" Comments rolled in. A few people defended me. Others piled on. If he's so rich, why can't he help out? It's always the wealthy who forget they're part of something bigger. One even wrote, "No one should be allowed to live like that without rules." That last one stuck with me. Not because I feared them, but because it showed just how easily narrative can twist truth into resentment. Neighbors started to act differently. The older couple who used to wave from their porch now looked away. A man jogging past my property made a dramatic show of avoiding eye contact. A group of kids riding bikes suddenly stopped playing near my tree line. The tension wasn't loud, but it was thick, like fog that settles overnight and never burns off. I told myself to let it go. These people didn't matter, but I'd spent years in tech learning how bad systems fester when no one calls them out. Silence isn't neutrality, it's permission, and I was done giving permission. It was the note shoved into my mailbox at 2:17 a.m. that broke the spell. I know the exact time because my new motion-activated camera, mounted discreetly under the eave of my porch, caught the whole thing in crystal-clear 4K. A man in a hoodie, one of Karen's little HOA lapdogs. I'd seen him at her side during one of her public neighborhood integrity strolls, walked up with a flashlight, glanced over his shoulder twice, and stuffed a folded piece of paper into the mailbox. The note, written in shaky block letters, read, "This is your last warning. You don't belong here unless you're willing to be part of something bigger than yourself." Bigger than myself. That line echoed in my head long after I crumpled the paper. I'd ignored the Facebook drama, the bags of garbage, the snide commentary from passers-by. I'd smiled through it all, but now they were sneaking onto my property at night with veiled threats. That wasn't a suggestion. That was escalation, and I knew exactly how to respond. I'd been quietly compiling my own file for weeks, copies of every letter they'd sent, time-stamped videos from my surveillance system, screenshots from the HOA Facebook group, including one especially damning post where Karen referred to me directly as a threat to community harmony, who should be legally obligated to contribute. I had emails from a neighbor who privately apologized for the way the HOA was acting and confirmed that Karen had been telling others I was planning to exploit a loophole to avoid paying dues, despite the fact that I wasn't under any obligation to begin with. I wasn't just documenting the harassment, I was building a case. My next stop was the sheriff's department. I spoke with a deputy named Lewis who listened to everything I laid out, letters, videos, photos, and took it all seriously. "They've crossed a line," he said, looking over the midnight mailbox footage. "That's targeted harassment, and if it keeps up, we'll treat it like stalking." I filed an official harassment complaint that day. Then I drove to the county clerk's office and pulled up every zoning map, land parcel definition, and HOA boundary on record. My property wasn't just outside the HOA's jurisdiction, it was formally exempted in the original planning documents, with clear notations that this parcel had been intentionally excluded due to its separate title history and classification, Karen's little fiefdom. It had a wall, legal and unscalable. I contacted my lawyer, an old friend named Danielle, who specialized in property and civil rights. When I laid out the situation, her response was immediate. This isn't just harassment. This is a coordinated campaign to force you into a contract you never signed. That's coercion. Within a week, we drafted a formal cease and desist addressed to both Karen personally and the Silver Pines HOA board. It outlined every incident, physical and digital, supported by timestamps and documentation. It included a clear demand. All contact with me was to cease immediately, or I would proceed with a civil suit for harassment, trespass, attempted fraud, and interference with property enjoyment. I didn't stop there. We submitted complaints to the state HOA Regulatory Authority and the County Board of Community Standards. Both bodies launched inquiries. One of the regulatory agents even called me personally to confirm some of the details. They've pulled this kind of thing before, he admitted, but they usually go after retirees who can't afford to fight back. This time, they picked the wrong guy. When the letter was delivered to Karen's door by a uniformed officer, she looked stunned, caught completely off guard. She had gotten so used to people rolling over that she never imagined someone might punch back. I wasn't just punching, I was dragging the whole circus into daylight. The court date came faster than I expected, mostly because once the legal gears started turning, they turned with a hunger. Danielle had filed the civil suit alongside our cease and desist, and to my mild surprise, Karen didn't try to settle. She doubled down. The HOA filed a response claiming they had every right to encourage cohesion and pursue financial fairness from those utilizing neighborhood infrastructure, whatever that meant. It was corporate speak, glued to entitlement. But in that courtroom, under oath and under lights, reality finally had its turn at the mic. Karen showed up in full regalia, powder blue pantsuit, pearls, a hard-bound binder clutched like a sacred text. She looked confident but brittle. You could feel it, like glass under tension. The judge, a no-nonsense woman with glasses that perched on her nose like they'd been trained to catch every lie, opened the session by asking Karen to define the legal basis of her claims. Karen started with her usual flair, speaking about community unity, moral obligations, and the invisible social contract. The judge cut her off halfway through her second metaphor. "Mrs. Whitmore," she said evenly, "I asked you for a legal justification, not a TED Talk." Danielle stood and methodically laid out the facts, that my property, lot number 17B, was never part of the Silver Pines HOA, that the original zoning excluded it deliberately and permanently, that HOA bylaws had no force outside their boundary map, which had been recorded and signed 15 years ago. She dropped a printed exhibit on the table, showing the map in full. The judge looked at it, then at Karen. "Do you dispute this zoning document?" the judge asked. Karen opened her binder, fumbled. "We were under the impression that with proximity and shared roads, there was some implied agreement." "There isn't," the judge said, snapping the binder shut herself. Then came the kicker. Our evidence. The harassment, the letters, the surveillance footage of HOA members trespassing onto my land in the dead of night, the posts where Karen publicly named and shamed me, encouraging neighbors to pressure the outsider. The courtroom went silent when Danielle played the video of Karen herself at my gate, sticking a notice under my door at 11:49 p.m. in a raincoat, muttering to herself. Karen's expression crumbled. The judge didn't even deliberate. The ruling came fast and clean. This court finds that Mr. Holland is under no legal obligation to join, support, or acknowledge the Silver Pines Homeowners Association. Furthermore, this court finds that the HOA and its acting president, Mrs. Whitmore, have knowingly and repeatedly harassed a private citizen with no legal connection to their organization. Restitution of $35,000 is awarded to Mr. Holland for emotional distress, legal costs, and property interference. Additionally, the HOA is hereby barred from any direct or indirect contact with Mr. Holland, his property, or his affairs. Any future attempt will be considered criminal harassment. Karen didn't even look at me as she gathered her things. By the time I stepped outside, word had already spread. A few neighbors had shown up for the hearing. Some lingered near the courthouse doors, pretending they weren't waiting for the outcome. One of them, an older guy I'd seen walking his dog, always polite, nodded and said quietly, "About damn time." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Karen had fallen, and the echo of that collapse was still rippling through the neighborhood. A week after the ruling, I installed a new sign at the end of my driveway. It wasn't flashy, just a clean hand-carved wooden plank mounted on a sturdy post, stained dark to match the cedar gate. Burned into the grain with a branding iron were the words, "This is not HOA land. The only authority here is mine." Below it hung a small brass plaque, a gift from my best friend, who'd followed the whole ordeal with gleeful amusement. Refused to join HOA, still won. Neighbors slowed down when they passed it. Some stared a little too long. A few even smiled. The atmosphere had shifted. No more glares. No more stiff shoulders or cold silences at the mailbox. Even the guy who used to pretend not to see me when he jogged by now gave a curt nod. It wasn't warm, but it was something. To my surprise, some folks even reached out quietly. One couple from the far end of the neighborhood dropped off a bottle of bourbon with a handwritten note. "Thanks for standing up. Karen's been terrorizing this place for years." Another man, soft-spoken, maybe early 70s, caught me at the hardware store and whispered, "I've been fined 4 times in 2 years for having sunflowers in my yard." Sunflowers. You did what the rest of us were too tired to do. Turns out, I wasn't the only one she'd bullied. I was just the first one who could afford to hit back hard. Karen was gone, not just from the board, but from the whole neighborhood. She sold her house within 3 weeks of the ruling. Rumor had it she left town entirely, moving to live with her daughter in Arizona. The HOA, meanwhile, underwent what polite people would call a leadership transition. New board elections were held, and for the first time, folks who actually lived on their property and minded their own business were voted in. I was invited to attend the new board's first open forum as a guest of honor. I politely declined. I wasn't interested in power. I didn't want to sit on any board or shape any vision of the community. I just wanted what I'd always wanted: my space, my peace, and the ability to live without someone telling me where to park my car or how often to edge my lawn. And now, finally, I had that. Life returned to normal, only better. The land felt quieter, lighter. I spent more time outside again, working on my cars, swimming in the pond, building a new pergola behind the house. My cameras stayed up, but I barely checked them anymore. No one came knocking. The ridiculous part? I actually did donate to a few local causes, quietly, on my terms. A library program here, a storm shelter upgrade there. Generosity to me was never the issue. It was about choice, not coercion. The moment someone tells you what you owe just because you have more, they've already forgotten what community is supposed to mean. I didn't win by being loud. I won by being right and prepared and stubborn as hell. Now, when I sit out on the porch with a coffee and watch the sun burn the mist off the treetops, I breathe easier. Not because the fight is over, but because I know no one else is writing my rules for me. And if they ever try again, well, I still have that lawyer on speed dial.